the morning sends the sun high in the sky. Who would hide from heaven's glory? Who would pass the challenge by? La 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 la.
There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la
Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past and new tomorrow waits for all who understand. There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la. Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past and new tomorrow waits for all who understand. La 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 la. Leave the past and new tomorrow waits for all who understand.
This week's reading from Rays of the One Light is called The Redeeming Light. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it and your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The book of Isaiah in the Bible, chapter 9, tells us, "The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined." What is this light of which so many scriptures speak? In Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhansa Yogananda, we read of an early experience the Master had with that light. I was blessed about the age of 8 with a wonderful healing through the photograph of Lahiri Mahashai. This experience gave intensification to my divine love. While at our family estate in Ichapur, Bengal, I was stricken with Asiatic cholera. My life was despaired of. The doctors could do nothing. At my bedside, Mother frantically motioned me to look at Lahiri Mahashai's picture on the wall above my head. "Bow to him mentally," she said. She knew I was too feeble even to lift my hands in salutation. "If you really show your devotion and inwardly kneel before him, your life will be spared." I gazed at his photograph and saw there a blinding light enveloping my body and the entire room. My nausea and other uncontrollable symptoms disappeared. I was well. At once I felt strong enough to bend over and touch Mother's feet in appreciation of her immeasurable faith in her Guru. Mother pressed her head repeatedly against the little picture. "O omnipresent Master, I thank thee that thy light hath healed my son." I realized that she too had witnessed the luminous blaze through which I had instantly recovered from a usually fatal disease. "Where my light is," God once told a saint whom the divine light had healed, "no darkness can dwell." The divine light, pure, calm, liberating, is the only final cure for every kind of delusion, ill health, emotional grief, and spiritual ignorance. Seek it daily in the silence, in deep meditation. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 5th chapter, "From whom that darkness of the soul is chased by light, splendid and clear, shines manifest the truth, as if a sun of wisdom sprang to shed its beams of light. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. So this is from Whispers from Eternity, and this is Demand to Eject Enemies of Bad Habits. Master is so creative and colorful in his poetry. Fierce foes and obstinate idle habits of restlessness have often entrenched themselves in the territory of my heart. Let me defeat them all, bent as they are on robbing me of my wealth of inner peace. Lead thou my forces of calmness victoriously to the divine kingdom of fulfillment. It's so beautiful to hear Master's words, even in this mild book of poetry. So it seems you get this fierce image of a war, and part of that is the energy that Master brought personally. Just every soul, though an aspect of God, and in a way made of that same substance of God, and therefore you could say has a certain uniformity, that all souls are equal and all souls have that same essence. And yet, each one is unique. Master said in Autobiography of a Yogi, even the atom is dowered with individuality. And just imagine what that means. Every atom has something that makes it unique. It's not that, this one has an extra proton or something like that makes it something, another atom. And yet, what it is, just imagine, because we think of even all the, hi Kieran, we think of even all the bricks, for example, making up this building, or even all the tiles on the floor. They're just sort of tiles. You don't think of each one as being unique. And so all the bricks in the building and so on, all the drops of water in the cup that you're drinking, you don't think of, well, let me not drink that one, he's in a bad mood. It's that but if it's much more than that, every atom. And one begins to think, well, what about the protons and electrons and neutrons? Those are just generic. I'm sure it's not. It's at every point in space, no matter how infinitesimally small, there is a uniqueness, a unique aspect. And this is helpful to think about when looking at the lives of masters, because each one will have his or her own particular expression. And so, for example, Master said, look at the difference between Sri Yukteswarji and myself. This is how he was explaining how the Guru does not make the disciple into a copy of himself. He said Sri Yukteswar expressed himself in terms of cold spiritual mathematics. And whereas he said, my nature is just more towards love. And so you see, in a way, they were almost opposites. And he said, but by attuning my will to Sri Yukteswarji's will, he found his own love developing. Not his own wisdom, though certainly his wisdom developed. And remember, avatars are not sort of learning things in the way that you and I are learning. They have learned. But what would be the point of them coming here saying, I have learned? And then levitating this one out of the chair and, creating a garden outside, and here everyone, have this whatever, free murka for everyone. What would be the point? We would then just worship them and say, look at these great gods who can do all these things that we can't. Please, maybe you give me some extra murka. In other words, we would just ask favors of them. We wouldn't try to become like them. And that's the great power and the great, I don't want to say the great secret of the autobiography of a yogi, but in a way, the secret is that Master didn't at all express the greatness of his own nature. He told Swamiji, most of those saints I met in Autobiography of a Yogi and others that I didn't meet, that I didn't mention, he said they were all asking me for advice. He said I came to them seeking truth, but they were just asking me. And he said they called him Choto Mahashaya, which he translates into English as little sir. And the Americans reading it go, oh, Abadiya, little sir, fine. They don't say Abadiya. But they just say, oh, little sir, fine, that's what that means. But you all know that Lahiri Mahashaya, that Choto Mahashaya, Mahashaya Kuti, means little great soul. And so they weren't calling him little sir, they were calling him little great soul, little great one. And they were acting on that because they could see immediately, it doesn't matter the size of the body that the great soul is in, or the age of the body. And so they were asking him for help. Of course, if he wrote that in the book, then it would be a whole different character in the book. We would just say, okay, wow. But he plays it so humbly that we can follow along, that we somehow can feel included. Okay, if he can do it, I can do it. And even in his early years of teaching, Master spoke this way. He did it in a way, he hid some of his light to a certain extent. And he said, especially because he was younger then too, he was saying, come on, we can all do it. And he made it seem easy. And it's not that he changed his story later on or anything, but near the end of his life, he revealed more of that greatness openly, to the point where when someone asked him, who was that saint who you saw at Encinitas, which was a town in the south where Master had a little hermitage. And Master said, I don't know what you mean. What saint are you referring to? And he said, you said it was over on the bluff, on the cliff overlooking the water, the ocean. And Master said, so many come, I don't know which one you're referring to. And so Swamiji expressed surprise that so many would come, and so many are passing through. And Master said, why be surprised? Wherever God is, there his saints come. Now that's a big statement. It was so big, in fact, that when Swamiji, having written it down, submitted it to others for publication in a collection of Master's sayings, they edited it to say, wherever a devotee of God is, there his saints come. It was too strong for them to say. They thought people might think Master is egotistical or something. And Swamiji said, well, he didn't say that. And also, he said, I am a devotee of God, and I haven't been pestered by saints always showing up, wanting food or a snack or something. We should be so lucky. And so he said, wherever God is. He wasn't saying, I am God. Because, and it's a subtle point, but even there was a saint who said to him when he was a boy, he said, I am God. And Master said, you don't say so. And he had a little mirror which he used to carry with him, and he showed it to the saint, because when he said, you don't say so, the saint, got all offended because all the followers were there. And this, humble person suddenly jumped up and said, you call yourself God. And so then he held up the mirror to the saint and said, look at the God. With his face all, in the recording he says, with the face all broken up with sourness. And he turned and walked off. And the saint ran after him and grabbed a hold of him and said, don't go, I'm very sorry for what I said. You've awakened me. And Master said that proved he was a saint. That in front of all of his devotees and disciples, he could humble himself before a little boy and say, I was wrong. And so Master said, the affection of a few disciples has spoiled you. He said, I saw you were a great soul, but why did you have to say that I am God? In other words, the wave cannot say, I am the whole ocean. But it's okay to say the ocean has become this wave, is expressing itself as this wave. And we can say that even now. Even if we don't fully have that identification clearly, we should still affirm that. We should say, God is playing through His creation through me. He's playing with me and through me. He's expressing Himself through me. Your soul is God. And so when you become fully identified with your soul, when your soul is fully in the driver's seat, then it will be God fully driving. Now, God is actually driving anyway, but we're not aware of it. So we're sort of feeling like, no, excuse me, I'm making the decisions. And so it's a little bit like if you see a child in a stroller, being pushed along like this, and the child is going like this and leaning like this, trying to steer the stroller this way, or the stroller goes that way, and the child says, yes, exactly as I intended. But it's just Divine Mother behind just pushing, okay, we'll go over here, okay. And the child says, excellent! And she says, that's fine. You can think that you're doing something. And this is really very often the way our life goes, even to the point of you finding Autobiography of a Yogi, even to the point of you finding this path. It's very likely that that day, if you could go back and find some palm leaf, prediction by Brigu or Agastya or something, they would have said on such and such a day in Dwapara Yuga, whatever, you will find your guru through the book, or something like that. So many predictions like that were made for Swamiji, and I witnessed it. So it's very, and I'm sure some of you have had these things, Nadi readings and so on. But in any case, so much of life is already predestined by our karma. Our responses to the lessons that come, I would like to think, are not predestined. In the sense that it's like you're going to take a certain number of exams in your life. How well you do is up to you. So it isn't to say that, you can just sleepwalk through life, or you can actively engage in life and the same outcome will be there. No. Just as much as your karma is already there, still every thought, every desire, every action is changing your karma. And of course, every meditation is releasing some karma much faster than having to go out and do all these things. In other words, you're living the consequences of your karma outwardly by walking out and having the auto guy run over your foot and breaking your small toe and then having to have a cast and so on for a month. Why not just meditate for a half an hour and finish it that way? Ow, my toe. Okay, all better. You see? So, I'm thinking, though, about life being on a track. Swamiji had this experience going to Disneyland, which he often liked to go to and bring groups of people. And he brought some friends who they went to this boat ride. So you're sort of on these boats and you're going on a lake, but they're all on a track. And so they were going and they were passing another friend. He was in a boat and passing a husband and wife friend of his in the other boat. And he waved at them. And the wife said to the husband, "Oh, look, wave back, honey." And he said, "Don't bother me. Don't you see I'm trying to avoid this rock?" Because he didn't know it was on a track. So he was, steering very carefully and so on. And so very often we are like that in our own lives, that we're thinking, whew, just barely made it. But God said, well, I was going to save you anyway. But in a way, we have to be in the drama. If we just think, well, it's all on a track, so it's fine. God, I hope you're looking out because I'm trusting you. Passively, with low energy, no. If we say, it's all on a track, Divine Mother, and I hope you're looking out for me because I trust you, with high energy, with devotion, with openness, then that is the right attitude. So it depends on what is appropriate for us. If it's hard enough to get out of bed each day, then it might be good to use some willpower, do some energization, and say, let me get going, because that's the next step. But when we make that such a habit that I'm taking care of everything very carefully, and then God says, I have an opportunity, don't bother me, I'm focused here. then we need to grow into that, you see. And it's not just, LKG, UKG, is there such thing as UKG? Okay, first standard, second, it's not like that. It is a cycle. Sometimes we go from putting out a lot of energy to realizing I should pray for grace and be open to grace. And then that grace comes. And then we may end up kind of letting our energy down a little bit. Because when things are going really well, okay, now I can sit back and relax for the rest of life as we're in our little thing. And Divine Mother takes our little track and steers the boat into the rock suddenly. And then, hey! And life is difficult again. You see, to wake us up. In other words, we're always trying to wake up more. And if we start to fall asleep again, then we have to put out more energy. So it isn't just, now I'm at this state. It's a constant rotation and adjustment. And furthermore, it may be that in certain areas of our life, we are really awake and sattvic and putting out energy. And then other areas, like for example, suppose we don't like to exercise, for example, but we need to keep the body going. So I like to meditate. Well, but if the body is sick, then you can't meditate. Or if the body dies after 40 years, it's hard to meditate. So, keep the body healthy and active. And Master said, keep the body fit for self-realization. You want the body to be a support. So it's worth investing in some of that. So I just picked an arbitrary example. But just to say that it's different aspects of our lives we have to focus on at times. Or we can't content ourselves to say, now I've done this, I'm really good at this. Well, God may be asking, what about balancing here or there? It's the great thing about community. Because in community, you often end up, in spiritual community you end up doing things that maybe are not your own training or your own background or even your own instinct. And you also meet people from different parts of, different areas or aspects of life, different parts of the world. But that people you wouldn't necessarily come in contact with otherwise. And so it brings a balance that is really helpful. I remember, I can tell this story because the concerned person isn't here. He came in the morning, and I said, this was in the early days before everybody just came in and magically created this beauty. And so I was, because he came in, I said, great, can you help me? Can you make the coffee? And he said, I don't know how to make coffee. And I said, would you like to learn? And he said, yes, I would like to. Coffee. That's, So, it was just like the liberating power of the coffee technique. Because, it's like I don't cook, or I don't do this, or I don't travel, or whatever. One person, when we went to Babaji's cave, said, I have never traveled to the Himalayas before, and someone else said I've never traveled to North India before, and someone said I have never left Tamil Nadu. It was just like, and it was clearly his orbit before, he didn't need to go, and suddenly the spiritual path was expanding his horizons even outwardly. And that's another point to remember, that it isn't at all that when we become spiritual, we become so detached from life that someone, says, excuse me, can you tell me which way to Music Academy? Om. It isn't that we can become so unnatural. In fact, the spiritual path makes us more natural. It opens the heart so that we, not only do we feel to help people, but actually people somehow sense more and more that, this person will help me. I found more and more, whatever city I was in, especially, meaning city that I was traveling to, people would come up to me and ask for directions. And it's like I was in Calcutta and someone will say, NS Road, what are you talking about? I don't know. But you see, people will feel that and do feel that even more from you, that, okay, of all the faces, this one looks the least scary. I think I'll go ask that person. So, but also, it's not just superficial things, although that is actually quite meaningful. Master himself could converse with physicians, with scientists, and speak to them in their own language, and speak to them very intelligently about different aspects of their particulars, the sort of expert details, you might say, of their work. And now, maybe a little bit he was cheating. Just look at the spiritual eye and then you can do it all. But Swamiji was the same way. We would see that. He would be able to always talk to professionals in some field very specifically. One banker came to him and said, all this talk about the depression and the recession and all that, it's all nothing. I work for the government bank and I can tell you we are fine. And Swamiji said, yes, but what about this and what about this and what about this and what about this? And the man said, actually, I am quite worried. He just came in sort of touting what they've basically been training to themselves to tout in public. Don't tell anyone. And then when Swamiji confronted him, he just opened up and said, it's all true, what you're saying. And so you will find that too, that one of the reasons why I had this experience in a corporate meeting. We were going to do a corporate workshop. Actually, it was our first workshop. Our second workshop actually, but our first go and meet the person and give the pitch and so on. And so the HR director of the company had said, I'm going to bring you to meet the CEO. And if he likes it, then we can do it. And if he doesn't, there's the door and so on. And so myself and Haridas Ji and one other friend went to the meeting, and I was very nervous, and so I put on a business suit and a tie and everything, and it's like, so if you saw me, it'd be like, wow, he must be really nervous, because it was like, wearing the battle armor. But it's like, if you wear this kind of thing, then you feel a little more like, you look like you know what you're doing, even though, of course, you don't at all. And later, Haridas and I were both going around in suits and ties, and we were joking that we were sheep in wolves' clothing. There's an expression, a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a monster trying to look innocent. Instead, we were like little sheep, but carrying on this big armor and so on. And so we said to this man who was from Ireland, and he said, so how are you? Yes, I'm fine. How do you like India? Yes, yes, yes. Like, this was like, give me the pitch, I'm ready. And he had this total, no, like, hey, so, just... And so I was with Haridas and this friend, and they both turned and looked at me, like... And so we hadn't talked about this part. Like, why do I have to do it? And it was like, well, you're wearing the suit. They later said that. You're the one who, has the tie. Go say something. So I said, these trainings and these techniques help people to establish work-life balance. And he said, I don't believe in work-life balance at all. I've told my wife, you get me on Sunday for 3 hours, that's it. I'm in the fastest growing industry, in the fastest growing economy in this world. I don't have time for any kind of balance. This is a war, basically, and we've got to be at the front to survive and succeed. So forget it. And just, okay. So then I said, Master, say something. And so I said, they also help people to work with their energy, because sometimes when we have a big setback or a disappointment, our energy can still be kind of tied up in that, and we need to be able to get a hold of ourselves when we're in an intense situation, like you said, and just go forward. And he said, I completely agree with you. Oh, God. And so he said, we have all kinds of things like that. Somebody's upset about something that happened last week, and it's like, snap out of it. We got to get moving. Great, we'll do the workshop. It's like, wow. And so later, the HR director said to me, how did you just tuned in to the exact thing that then, made him, want, how did you do that? I was like, But later I reflected. Certainly I prayed to Master. But the thing is that when you live more at your center, and I'm not claiming that for myself, but I'm saying when we meditate, we are trying to return to our center, live from our center, and we begin to act from our center. And we begin to even notice that we have a center. And then we also notice when we are really off center, because something doesn't feel right. When you don't have that reference point, this is just how you walk around all day. That's what I do. You don't know, wait a minute, let me get back together. And so when you live from that center, then you can start to, as Swamiji says, relate to the center of other people, but also relate even to the center of a situation, the center of a problem, the core issue, for example. And again, I don't claim that that's what it was, but it ended up having that outcome. And so you will find that more and more, that you'll be able to speak to people from all over, and even in intense situations, you'll be able to tune in. Part of it is, it comes clearly from intuition, that just Master whispers in your ear and you say, okay, you say whatever he said and it works. But other times you won't even think. You'll just speak and someone will say, it's exactly what I was thinking, or that's exactly the problem. How did you know? I didn't know. But because you're more at the center of your atom of individuality, it starts to put you at the center everywhere. Again, 2 thoughts from Autobiography of a Yogi. God is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. So if you get to your center, you can start to touch the center everywhere. And also he said thoughts are universally, not individually rooted. So thoughts, he said, are like radio waves passing through this room. But because we don't have the radio on, I'm pointing at the imaginary radio over here, we don't hear them. We need something to catch them out of the air and present them to us. It's the same with thoughts. And so that also helps you to know Master's thoughts are passing through the room too. And so let's tune into that. Dhyanaji tells the story of when she was new on the spiritual path, and she was something happened and kind of put her in a bad mood, and she was trying to meditate, and she heard basically Divine Mother's voice say something like, what station are you tuning into? It was a crummy station. It was the radio station. It was like, tune into the higher station, tune into me. And so Swamiji tells this experience also of, again, tuning in. This was very early on in the spiritual, in the growth of Ananda. And so he had met Jyotishji, but Jyotish was not helping him directly in the sense that he was, helping with classes or this or that. But Swamiji had only Jyotish as a friend, and then also a secretary who was answering his letters and sending out books through the mail and, all this kind of thing, support. And when Swamiji was at his most extended, when he was just barely hanging on because he was teaching classes in all these different cities, she decided, this is just too difficult, and so she quit. And she said, I'll give you a month's notice to find somebody else. And the next day she stayed home and then sent in her resignation. So she gave no notice, actually. And he was really upset, he said, because not just because of he didn't have this help anymore, but he said she knew that he was so extended, trying to barely keep the thing together, and then she left and then found another job the next day, and then immediately joined that job. That's what happened. And he said, also she was a friend. How could she just, as a friend, just personally let him down? And he said he was quite upset about it and didn't want to be upset. And again, for Swamiji, upset, is not necessarily the same as for us upset. But still, these were the words he used in telling the story. Just like Master, he tells in a way that we could relate to. And so he said he meditated on it and put his mind here and concentrated and said, Master, Divine Mother, every time he tried to open his heart, his mind would come up with all kinds of arguments about why it was so unfair. And so, because his heart's feelings were disturbed, so he said, I won't think. And this is a very helpful technique if sometimes you're very upset. Say, I won't think anymore. I will stop. I won't listen to my thoughts anymore, because they just are torturing us. Just say, shh. And so he said, with my feelings, said Divine Mother, show me the truth of the situation. Show me how to feel better. And he said, instantly, he felt uplifted in joy. And he said, and it wasn't that he saw, oh, isn't it wonderful that she quit? It wasn't that, oh my God, it was such a good thing that now I'm completely stranded. He was saying, but what he saw rather was that in this particular case, she didn't need to do what she did, and she did. She let him down. She let down her friend. And he realized there was probably a little more to it than that, but he said he realized she had made a mistake, and that she did something she shouldn't have done. And he instantly felt for her and felt, how can I help her? Because she misunderstood and she shouldn't have done this. Again, it wasn't personal to him that, oh, it happened to be him she was helping. It could have been in anyone, even saying, I'll stay for a month and not staying. It's a mistake. And so he felt that openness in his heart for her, and he went and saw her. And she was actually ill at the time, and he was just focused on, what can I give? How can I help? But he said it came from divine inspiration. It didn't come from a mental affirmation of, I'm so sorry you're sick, and I know on the spiritual path I'm supposed to help you, so how can I help you? Here's a pillow. Do you need a pillow? Obviously, it wasn't like that. You can't fake it. You can't pretend. It doesn't work. But he really felt it in his heart that this was the case. But it came from inspiration, and it came from openness. Divine Mother, you show me. It's amazing how often she does, how often she will. And remember, she's eager to help you. When she doesn't seem to help you, it's either because we didn't get the message through, or we didn't hear her answer, or she actually has something better in mind. Master said, God doesn't always answer your prayers in the way you expect, but if you pray to Him with devotion, He will grant you much more than you expect. And how much of that is true? Swamiji said he thought when he would go to meditate before he met Master, he might gain a little peace of mind. That was the highest goal that he could consciously set before himself. And look what he gained. So much beyond just peace of mind, and how much we have all gained as a result of that, and even how much Master's work has flourished because of that. And so we, in the same way, can act as his channels and act with love for him, and also see, how can I reach this person? It may not be helpful to talk about Autobiography of a Yogi. I just got an email from someone saying, well, I recommended Ananda to someone, and so he went to the website and he said he enjoyed the guided meditation and he enjoys the discourses. And somehow, maybe he said, I don't want Kriya Yoga, but somehow my friend said in response to that, well, just doing that enough, I don't know if you'll get exactly what we get from Kriya Yoga, but maybe you will, and so on. I don't see why there was I must have misunderstood. It's like, why is it one or the other? But he was saying, I want to basically tell the guy, look, take Kriya. Discourse is fine. And I said, well, listen, not everybody comes to the path seeking Kriya. It's not that they read the book, they read that thing, 30 seconds equals 1 year of growth. Okay, then what if you missed that? What if you yawned? You wouldn't have yawned, but you know what I mean. When you're turning the page and so on. And so, not everybody comes seeking what you were seeking. Some people come for the music, some people come for the satsang, some people come for level 1 and then they don't do more. That's enough for them. Some people don't even know why they came. As one person said, I decided not to come and here I am. Something made me come. And so sometimes that's just either the soul or the guru or somebody just pushing us along, because even though it seems against our will, it isn't against our deepest will. So, in all things, remember that Divine Mother is just pushing the stroller along with you inside of it. And if you ask her, well, where would you like to take me? Then you'll find a great joy in life. God bless you.